Minister Phelan some of my time if he wanted to speak. I might thanks Minister for attending, and thanks to all the contributors. So I have 10 minutes. I might work backwards just through some of the comments that were made, because I thought the Minister was overly defensive, but I don't want to get into a tit for tat with him about it, because what I'm interested in is the bill. I want to just make a couple of points in relation to the consultation. Well, I mean, you know, when it goes to if this bill goes to committee stages, I hope it will. You know, there's so many opportunities for consultation through public representatives. It doesn't end here. It didn't end before it came here, and this has emerged from consultation, and it's emerged in part from consultation with people who feel excluded and who have felt excluded from the process. Minister, your fear about this model being one that people will want to replicate. And one of the reasons I've been enthusiastic about it is I represent a constituency that is probably not unlike yours, except that most people haven't travelled through it, whereas most people in Ireland have at some stage travelled through your constituency, and I made that point at the start. But parts of West Tala, parts of North Clondalkin, I'd love to see a model like this, where a statutory agency was brought in that actually met the needs of the people and respected the context, that it wasn't just a Dublin North Inner City statutory authority that's transplanted into West Tala. I would love to see a Mulvey investigation, Mulvey-like investigation into areas in my constituency and other constituencies. And what's wrong with replicating that? Because one of the lessons I think that we have learned is that the cost of not doing it is so significant. So I don't you've every right to be very proud of the work that the former Taoiseach did in the personal interest he took in this. And one of the points I made early on was that's precisely what it was. It's a personal interest. Don't underestimate the fact that this is your constituency. Don't underestimate the fact that you're the Minister for Finance. You control the purse strings of government. What happens when you're gone, Minister? What happens when you're gone? What happens to these people up here when you're gone? And where maybe your successor just doesn't have as big an interest in Dublin's North Inner City. And that's really the fundamental question that this bill is trying to address, is trying to ensure that for a period, not forever, but for 10 years, that whoever comes and goes, it's not subject to the whims, passions or interests of any particular politician, but that actually it's put on a statutory basis. Membership of the board, look, Deputy O'Sullivan, Deputy MacDonald, Deputy Burton, Deputy Smith, Deputy Kenny, they all highlighted these all are open to absolute, there's huge flexibility in terms of what needs to be done. You're the experts, you know, you've come through this, and particularly you, Deputy O'Sullivan. And this isn't, as I said, like coming from this side of the House exclusively or from one political party. This has arisen from the community. And everybody keeps talking about, you know, the bad old days in the Dublin Docklands Authority. And, you know, while it did some work, it ran into controversy. And I can't defend that. And I'm not going to defend some of the things it did. But I was at a function recently, Minister, and Minister O'Donoghue, and you quite passionately spoke about the great regeneration that's taking place in another part of your constituency, which is Grange Gorman. That was Bertie Ahern's, one of his great legacies to this city. But nobody ever mentions that. They always talk about the, you know, the stuff that went wrong. And any city would be proud of what's happening in Grange Gorman. And Grange Gorman was a derelict site, run down, backed up by a statutory agency to ensure that it has achieved its potential. It would grace any city. It's a spectacular space, and it's only getting better and better. So that's what we want to do with this, is ensure that things are driven by a statutory agency. Any of the issues that were raised by any of the of my colleagues here, you know, I'll be the first to put my hands up and say, you know, there might be some clumsy language in this, but that's easy to overcome. There might have been a department omitted, and I think the Department of Heritage was omitted as well. All of those things can be rectified. They're not insurmountable. But the point, I suppose, that I want to reinforce, again, we'll say the geographical area that was mentioned, is that it's much bigger than this. Without labouring the issue, the fundamental point about this and the background to this is Kieran Mulvey did great work on this, but he is gone. Enda Kenny took a particular interest in it. He's gone. As I said, your view of this, Minister, I don't think you fully appreciate the importance of your role and the power you bring to this as Minister for Finance and as a TD for the constituency. I would love, in relation to West Halla, be the Minister for Finance and be able to back up commitments in terms of pulling the purse strings, and what I suppose the anxiety of the community here, and I think it's expressed by Deputy O'Sullivan as well, is what happens, what can we do to ensure that this isn't a passing phase, that when different people who've invested a lot of time and interest in it, when they're gone, something else comes in, takes their place and takes their interest. I can already see it in terms of, the present Taoiseach isn't as committed to this as the previous Taoiseach was, and that's not a criticism. I can see clearly you are. The present Taoiseach has other items on his agenda. So, in summary, Ceann Comhairle last Ceann Comhairle, without having to rehearse the whole thing, the fundamental objective behind this bill is to put this on a statutory footing, to broaden the area to ensure that people aren't excluded, and to ensure that it's driven for a period of 10 years, not just economic generation, but social generation, educational generation, welfare generation, for the betterment of the people of this particular area. Thanks, Ceann Comhairle.